It's important to move into a digital documentation, digital communication as well. So that will reduce the costs for everyone.
A digital signature is a certain level of achievement in automation.
Today we are submitting our documents electronically, which took away the inefficiencies in the pre and post documentation of every single import and export that happens out of this country.
Hello, you're with Echelon. Sri Lanka's path towards e-governance has had several important milestones, one of which has been the introduction of digital signatures. Now, digital signatures make it possible for documents clearly authenticated to be digitally submitted or exchanged. And in the studio with us are three gentlemen who each represent agencies or companies that are critical parts of the ecosystem that has brought digital signatures into trade flows. And in the studio with us today is Ananda Jayalath, who is Assistant Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Ananda, you are also involved early on from the process when digital signatures were being enacted into law. Also with us is Sudattha Silva, who is a director at Customs, an agency that has pioneered digital signatures. And we have from the private sector, Sean Van Dort. Sean works for MAS, but he's also the chairman of the Logistics Subcommittee of the Joint Apparel Association Forum. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. May I start with you, Ananda? You were certainly involved, like you were saying, in setting up the laws, the regulatory framework for digital signatures. You are also with the central bank. Does the central bank itself use digital signatures?
Absolutely. We have about 100 signatures right now.
Right.
And we are using it for the safety, security of the documentation process, communication process. All countries are moving towards digital environment. It's cost efficient, faster,
Sure.
and more convenient for the users. Green, it will not use paper, energy efficient. And so that is one reason why we need to have, because Sri Lanka is having a issue of productivity. We need to improve productivity in all corners. For that reason, it's important to move into a digital documentation, digital communication as well. So that will reduce the costs for everyone.
Sometimes we may have a view that digital signatures are most useful in transactions. You are authenticating a transaction. You are giving, you sign for that. Is that the function they are used for in central banks? Central bank is also a regulator.
Digital signatures fulfill two issues that encountered in digital transaction, digital communication.
Okay.
One is tampering with the documents.
Sure.
And impersonation. So these two are very significant when you have reliability on your communications, your documents, your payments, all sorts of activities. And when digital signature is there, you have integrity. You have the confidence that this has not altered in between, document or your email. And even if they are altered, you can recognize, trace the source. And again, someone can deny that it is not sent by him.
Sure.
So those are the, I think, features that helped the increased confidence in digital transaction among the public, general public. Central bank is no exception.
Sure.
We also need to have a very strong communication link where we have some privileged documents, privileged emails. Whenever we go, we don't want anyone to interfere in between, anyone to impersonate that. So it's very tried and tested way for a system to adopt these digital signatures so that everyone will have a confidence that these documents or these communications are not tempered in between or not changed in between.
Sure. So that if I may come to you, Customs, you were telling us was one of the first state institution to adopt digital signatures, right? You are also an important agency, or you stand at the border of Sri Lanka with the outside world, and how did it go down when you decided to implement this? You had stakeholders on two sides. You had the internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders. So how did you manage this relationship?
In fact, it all started with the paperless processing of customs clearance.
Right.
As a customs is a border agency, and we regulate the cross-border movement of goods, imports and exports. And when it comes to clearance of imports and exports, there are a lot of documents involved. There are local initiatives as well as international initiatives for trade facilitation.
Right.
In order to do trade facilitation, one of the key development we can achieve is the automation of all the processes. In fact, Sri Lanka Customs started the automation process way back in 1993. We have a history of over 25 years. It's a long journey. During these 25 years, we realized that the ultimate facilitation we can provide to the trader is to clear without documents and without asking the trader to come to customs.
When you mean without documents, without physical documents?
Without physical documents, paper documents. So in 2011, we developed our system to receive customs declaration online. But still,
customs declaration is an importer saying, okay, this is what my cargo consists of.
That's right. So he submits a declaration to customs online, but still, we insisted on paper document. The reason why the customs law requires the physical signature.
Okay.
Papers with signatures.
Sure.
And at that time, that was a great barrier for us to go for paperless.
Oh.
Since 2011, although we provided the platform, we realized that we have to now develop our system. And in 2016 and 17, we started enhancing our infrastructure, IT infrastructure. And in 2019, we were ready to roll out paperless clearance. But however, there was one more initiative we had to take, that was online payment. And when we were looking for a partner to help us to implement online payment, we came across this unique agency called Lanka Clear.
Lanka Pay now.
Lanka Clear is, I think, the parent company under which they have different sectors. Lanka Sign is one of their, I think, subsidiary companies. So Lanka Clear helped us to establish the platform to receive online payments. With that, we started moving towards paperless processing. And one of the major requirements in paperless processing was the digital signature. How we are going to get this electronic document signed and authenticated. And at that time, Lanka Clear came forward and said, okay, we can do it for Sri Lanka Customs. So we partnered with Lanka Clear and implemented digital signature. Of course, we had a period to pilot the program. Of course, we invited few companies to pilot the program, and MAS is one of the companies which came forward voluntarily to do the piloting period. And after successful piloting period, we launched the digital signature in August last year.
Can you clarify something for me? One of the impediments you had to electronic document submission was, you said, the requirement in the law for a signature, right? Now, digital signatures in their current form meet that requirement. Or did you also have to change the law in between?
No, not at all. Of course, ICT agency has done the homework well in advance. In 2006, they have brought the Electronic Transaction Act, which enables us to accept the electronic documents, and also it talks about the implementation of digital signature. Of course, we were ready, and especially when the pandemic came, we had to maintain physical distancing. We had to clear goods without the presence of the importer or his agent. And since we had started the project to go for paperless since 2017, in the year 2020, it was a blessing in disguise for us. We implemented the paperless process and the digital signature.
Just by way of background for everybody, I think Lanka the organization that was known as Lanka Clear formerly is now known as Lanka Pay. I'll turn to you, Sean. You are an organization. One of your roles, your full-time role, is at MAS, where MAS as an exporter, deal with border agencies all the time, because you import a substantial amount of your inputs, and all your product is sent to overseas markets globally, right? You also piloting digital signatures with Sri Lanka Customs. How was that process? How did it go?
Well, not just to mention MAS, the total apparel manufacturers in Sri Lanka are in a continuous improvement process.
Right.
And when we do a time study of all the transactions we do, all the processes that we make, we found that our pre and post documentation takes most of the time.
Right.
We have brought in state-of-the-art manufacturing techniques, etc. That is a given today, and Sri Lanka is number one, I believe, in this part of the world. But we had these draconian laws with the customs. Even though the Electronic Act came into place, we just couldn't submit our documents electronically because the customs wanted us to see us there because of their law, because of their ordinance. Ordinance prevented that. And we had workshops continuously with customs, and we finally, after much to do on it, it was finally ratified, and today we are submitting our documents electronically, which took away the inefficiencies in the pre and post documentation of every single import and export that happens out of this country, in and out of this country.
So the apparel industry itself must be accounting for tens of thousands of containers and out of this country. So each of those containers required physically documents.
We say each and every shipment, whether it had 1 container or 100 containers, it was shipments, and all those documents had to be physically signed.
Right.
Mr. Sudattha will agree. When we first started, every customs declaration had about 18 copies.
Wow.
Then we came down to 11, it came down. Today it's just one if the enterprise needs it. We can go with zero documentation, but there are
zero physical documentation. But today we can go without a single paper, which we call paperless. And I think it has helped us to a great extent to be more efficient. And like he correctly said, the pandemic was an eye-opener. Right.
The initial resistance actually came within the customs, because the customs officers were the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
The fear of the unknown. The IT knew very well about it, but we had so many, battles to fight. But after that, once the education started, and today it's a piece of cake, and we don't even have to be there when we process our documentation.
Yeah. So Ananda, this fear of the unknown is a very real thing, right? It's without being too judgmental. How did it play out at the central bank from your vantage point? Because you were one of the early adopters again.
Right. I think it's everywhere.
Sure.
You need to maintain status quo, and you can't go away from that. Not really very willing to do that. But at some point in time, you have to challenge the status quo. And if something is efficient and more productive, why not adapt it? Because our main issue is productivity.
Sure.
So I think we have addressed it via this. And as rightly mentioned, COVID, all these difficulties that we encountered has brought up to this level, and everyone is now geared toward adapting it and already adapted.
If I can come to you, Sudattha, with the same question, the fear of the unknown, right? When you're fundamentally changing a system that you have been so used to for, in the case of the customs audience, several hundred years, right? 1.5 centuries or something old ordinance. How did customs manage to navigate this?
In fact, it is all what you require is the enthusiasm. As he correctly said, there is always fear when it comes to unknown. When you give the education, then people will always adore it. I will give you a little incident which I experienced during one of my investigations. I came across a forged customs declaration.
All right.
But it has been signed by a customs officer, and I was familiar with his signature. I happened to go and show that document to that particular customs officer and ask, is this your signature? The answer I got from that officer. He said he looked at it for some time. He read the content of the document, He said, yes, this is my signature, but it was not signed by me.
Right.
The reason why he said, yes, this is my signature, it's quite similar to his signature. Even he himself can't differentiate immediately at a glance. Then I managed to apprehend the person who forged the signature of the customs officer, and he admitted that he did it. And I just wanted to test something. In my case, I have very complex signature. I told him, okay, can you try my signature? I showed him one of the specimens of my signature, and I asked him to try my signature. He couldn't. He was a very smart guy, but still he could not forge my signature. And the story continues. One day I was chatting with a group of new customs officers, and I told this story. Then one young customs officer who just joined, he said, "Sir, I can forge your signature." I said, "What?" "Yes, I can." Then I showed him the specimen. He did it exactly the way I signed. So the moral of the story is, there are smarter people than the smartest. Why the digital signature is so useful that it cannot be tampered with. The digital signature will give the proper security to the document. Now, customs is a place where you need so many documents for clearance. Starting from the customs declaration, it's beyond the customs declaration. We need the commercial invoice, we need the bill of lading, we need the packing list. So many documents issued by various other parties. And it comes to the supply chain, and finally through the bank, comes to the importer, and the importer submits it to us. And some documents are originated from various overseas agencies. And when it comes to submission to Sri Lanka Customs, validating the document is with the importer. The law says the importer must submit the original documents. And with the implementation of with the enactment of the Electronic Transaction Act, it paved the way for anyone to sign a document electronically. And that really supersedes the provisions in the customs ordinance. That is why we could implement the digital signature at customs.
So when you have when exporters or importers have their customers sign sign electronic documents shown. In this process, how did it work before digital signatures? Assume your parties you deal with overseas are capable of doing digital signatures, as they possibly have been for others. So you would get those electronically and you'd have to print them out and submit to customs. How did it go?
So no, basically our customers that we manufacture for, majority of them were web-based.
Sure.
All the documents went through the web.
Right.
And there was a trail that they could have, we'll sign it manually, but it'll be scanned and sent through the web. So that was not a problem. The bottleneck was our documentation internally.
Got it.
In Sri Lanka. And that had very adverse effects on us, because there were incidents where in our name, people have so-called cleared fabric, but it was something else. And when it's a reputed apparel manufacturer, generally customs know who we are, and there is a green channel facility that you go through. But actually what was coming was contraband.
Right.
And because they could have forged our signature, they had our VAT number, they had our TIN number, and they just forged the signatures and it went through because of the reputation of the company. But with digital signatures, that eradicates that
Completely
eradicates it, and it's actually a comfort factor for us. Because we are now sure of what we are doing, and no one can just ruin the reputation of reputed apparel manufacturers, who is the backbone of this country right now when it comes to exports. So that's the security we had.
Ananda, implementing this at central bank no doubt would have been challenging, but I suppose the real benefits of this will be its wider adoption in the financial services sector, right? This is huge. There's tens of thousands of transactions happening every day, every hour. From where you are, how is that journey going, and what does Sri Lanka or the financial sector or Sri Lanka have to gain from the wider adoption of digital signatures?
I think it's a very pertinent question. What I would say is that it's very important if we are to reap the benefit of digitalization, that we must preserve the confidence of the public. And if you are to preserve the confidence of the public, errors and omissions or frauds has to be minimized in that. Those could happen, should be minimized.
Sure.
And in this journey, everyone need to recognize that their assets are secured, their documents or communications are secured. And when you communicate with your bank or your any other entity that you are dealing with, that your documents are not tampered with in between and your mails are not impersonated or doc communication, that's very important.
Sure.
And that process is kind of guaranteed or ensured by adapting digital signature into it. Because when digital signature is there, the minimum you can trace to the source and identify whether it's a forged or whether it's a tempered with in between. And when this kind of facility is there continuously adopting by the wider society, because you will be safe as the other person that dealing with you is safe. If majority of the infringement of cyber or electronic security happen not via computers themselves, either happen via users misusing their identity or the key, or else the other subsystems adapted to like CCTV systems or those things like those. In one weakness in one element would infringe the security of everything. So that is why you need to have wider awareness. When wider adaptation is there by the public, every one of us know that our area is secured. When our area is secured, we know that other person can trust on us the way we do in transaction. And that is important for everyone.
I know, for instance, central bank has been encouraging the financial sector to adopt digital signatures widely. Obviously, their clients also have to be then willing to do so. Do you have a sense about how widespread it is, or how big the opportunity in the financial sector is? Is it possible to quantify?
In payments, I would say it's close to full. 100%. In payments, whatever payment transaction, if you request something from to do some transaction on your account.
Sure. So you're referring to a SLIP system?
SLIP system, that communication related to SLIPs.
Sure. Right? But that doesn't involve a digital signature, does it?
That doesn't directly involve signature, but communication would involve. Because, for example, if you want your bank to transfer something for you from your account, you have to have authenticated email message.
Sure.
That's an area where when you are sending that you can have.
Sure.
You can say, of course, banks will have their authenticated mechanism too. They have to send you that particular portal. But when you are communicating, it's again important. And even within institution, if you say payment instruction is gone, not final instruction, but the subordinate to that one. When that is gone, if person receiving can confirm that this is authentic, this is received from the right source, this is not tampered with, so he has confidence in that. Errors would be minimized. And fraud would be minimized, because no one can send the fake mail or fake request. And these were the challenges, the significant challenges that we
are all financial institutions, let's say banks and finance companies, how many of them are ready for this?
Central Bank has guidance or directions issued on the cyber security and what kind of security measures that they adopted. And in this guidance that we included the security measures, like things like those, this automatically comes in. And so banks generally in compliance, there are here and there could be, but generally in compliance, particularly in payments. The finance companies also falling in line. They may need some time for updating the systems, things like those, but generally in line. Yes.
Sudattha, can you give us a sense about how the usage of digital signatures, particularly in submitting customs declarations and stuff like that, right? Surely it has been possible to submit these electronically for a while. It may sound like a basic question, but how many of those declarations come with digital signatures?
That's a very good question. As Sean said, when we implemented the paperless processing and then followed by that the digital signature, there was internal resistance. That was purely because lack of knowledge. But we gave them the awareness and they realized the value of it, especially during the pandemic. But at the same time, there was external resistance from the users.
Right.
Our observation is that again, beyond the knowledge gap, some of the external users were concerned about some of the opportunities they are going to lose. Because especially the customs house agents, they were bringing little resistance. First thing, they would like to come to customs. Some of them, they would like to come to customs. When we implement paperless processing and digital signature, they lose the opportunity to come to customs. Then the second thing, sometimes they are not technically ready. They don't have the technical infrastructure to implement digital signature. So in order to overcome these challenges, we had to use little bit of pressure on them, and we declared that from January we will be moving totally to digital signature.
January 2022.
January 2022. But still we realized the major sector was not ready. So we have now extended it. But because of various strategies we have been using over last maybe 12 months, there is a significant improvement of the usage of the digital signature. And from
are you confident that you can fully switch?
The things are improving very fast.
Right.
But at the same time, again, I must admit that although we have implemented it, there are certain areas where we will also need improvement. For example, at the moment, we have provided the facility to sign the customs declaration with digital signature. And also the attached documents, which comes in the PDF format. They have to scan and convert the document into PDF file and sign the PDF file with the digital signature, upload it and attach it to the customs declaration in our system. But in our system, still we cannot view the digital signature of the scanned documents. We have to download it and open it separately outside our Asikuda application. So that is a little cumbersome process for the user, the customs officer. So we are in the process of improving our Asikuda system. Within the system, the customs officer can open the document and verify the digital signature. So there are improvements coming from both the external improvements and internal improvements. Hopefully, we will be able to achieve the greatest level at the end, by the end of this year.
Sean, if I come to you, so from an industry point of view, from a shipper's point of view, how far down the road do you think we are from full realization of the benefits of digital signatures? I'm sure with the big organizations like the one you work for, perhaps you have already fully realized the benefit, but overall in Sri Lanka, how far are we from?
I think even in big organizations, we have only looked at the customs documentation.
Right.
Finance departments of these organizations are still not using digital signature, mainly purely because of the company's regulations. And I would say that the biggest transactions within an organization like us is import and export. And the documentation or the accounting will probably go on through system based. So there is a traceability and trackability of these transactions, which does not have a major pain point for us. But overall, what we are struggling as apparel manufacturers are the other border agencies, not only customs, except BOI and customs. We have sometimes to go for other approvals that we need, especially with the wildlife, or if you've been a particular button which is of tortoise shell or whatever is that, they are still not savvy with these things. They don't have the technical infrastructure and the software and the hardware to deal with those. So we still have the customary letter chopped with a company embossed seal and personally signed, and we see that as a big bottleneck to push forward in this digital space in Sri Lanka, given the fact, even though our buyers are purely web-based and they're on finance platforms, so they don't even want to see our document, our export document. They don't want to see it because I'm handing over goods to one of their nominated people. They confirm on the system that they received X number of pieces. So it is all linked, and we are far away from coming to that stage as a country.
Right. So while big organizations like the one you represent or the apparel sector in general dominated by big companies where you have been using a web-based system that doesn't require downloads and saving and all that, you think there's the rest of the industry has some distance to go? How can we sort of, I'll ask all of you, how can we nudge this forward short of ultimatums, maybe, ultimatums or deadlines may be one way to do it. What are the other tools available to us to realize the full benefits?
Probably another pandemic. I'm sorry if I sounded cynical, because the pandemic quickened the space.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
And we saw the benefits. Otherwise, we are called to go and meet the officers, whether it be your customs or anyone. So I think the political will also should be there to push this. No point passing these resolutions and board paper. The political will should be there that we should go digital. You have seen how digitalization fell on its face when the Google balloons are supposed to have gone up and we were all supposed to be Wi-Fi connected, etc. But it is just was it a gimmick, or was it just another carrot in front of us to see the common man, to make them happy, and then finally the fact of the matter is that nothing happened. So it's the political will, I think, is the most important thing in this space, to connect most of the board agencies who are government run.
Sure. Customs potentially stands out. Would you agree? Absolutely stands out for having achieved what it has in this span of time. Sudattha, what do you think you have as lessons for wider adoption? If customs were able to do it, how do we propagate this further?
Of course. First thing is, as I agree with Sean, the political will. If the political will is there, of course, the officials will get motivated. I totally agree that other agencies related to customs clearance, there are many board agencies should implement the digital signature. But before moving on to digital signature is a certain level of achievement in automation. Some agencies are yet to even start their automation processes. So first thing, you have to start small. First, try to automate your business process. Then we have set the examples to them. We can always help the other government agencies to guide them how they can grow and ultimately implement the digital platforms to do their all business processes. The best way is to give to make the people understand the value of this. Of course, I don't wish there will be another pandemic, but I agree that the pandemic has brought some, it has enlightened the people to see the value of digitization. And that will really boost the confidence of the government officials.
Just for some background, the Asikuda system, the one automation system that runs customs, was introduced many years ago, wasn't it? Was it not?
Yes, we started with the latest. We started in 1993 with the application available at that time. But the Asikuda is also growing from time to time, and we have implemented the latest version, which is really technically high in standards.
Sure. So banks also, Ananda, have sophisticated core banking systems. They have world-class vendors. When they need something on top of the core banking system, they can procure it, right? What do you think will be the spark, that will lead to as wide adoption of digital signatures in the financial sector?
To me, two elements. One is awareness, right kind of awareness. Second is willingness.
Sure.
I don't know, it's whether political or otherwise.
Sure.
It's willingness. Willingness comes from as rightly mentioned, pain you feel, mainly. Right? When you feel it, it's costing you too much, it's threatening your life, your willingness is come how to survive. And I think that's very important to create that environment. That willingness is there because you would feel going forward, the entire world will be digital. We have no escape. And dinosaurs will die. And those who cannot adapt to that one will have to fade away. And if we want to survive, we need to reduce our costs and do the way things we are doing now, change the way things are being doing now, improve our productivity. That's very important. To improve productivity, that is cost and time. So you need to bring down cost and bring down time that you spent on each one.
Gentlemen, I have to appreciate your time here. You've sort of managed to lay down the landscape as from a regulatory point of view all the way to a user point of view and government agencies. I'll ask you, each of you, to take maybe a minute and any final thoughts that you have that you'd like to leave behind and approach this with a view to also say pushing the agenda forward. How can we push this agenda forward?
I think it should be made mandatory by law that digital signatures will be, and digitalization of all private and government institutions as with a deadline. Unfortunately for me, in this part of my opinion is that if you don't enforce it from some very powerful authority or the government itself, that this is not going to take place. It will be the whims and fancies of the private sector who want to embrace it, who do not want to embrace it. But if you're forward thinking like the apparel sector, who will always embrace new technology and new ways of becoming efficient and becoming world class. If we are to be world class, we have to ensure that we embrace the move and go forward.
Sudattha.
I have a different view. As a government servant, I think what we talk about here is e-governance. So in order to go for full e-governance, there must be a national level e-governance policy. So there must be initiatives to integrate all the government agencies into platforms. Those who are having linked activities, they must work in some same platform. In order to do that, you have to have the national level approach and have the national e-governance policy with proper guidance from the experts.
And Anand, the final words from you.
So the way I think is slightly different because as far as government is concerned, it's a government entity, of course, changing the law and allowing the law to take place over everything else, that's fine. But as far as private citizens are concerned, I think it's their will and it's their need. But what we need to create is awareness to say that if you do not change the way that you have done things 100 years ago, that you are not creating convenience for yourself. You are struggling with same stack of documents or same stack of the procedures that you had continuously. Is it the way that life is lived? And we have to communicate that and bring the concept of convenience and comfort together with the efficiency and productivity for the public. So then that communication will have strong. I know that there should be a pain to people to understand, but somewhere or the other they will have to feel this. That is a way forward.
I suppose once you overcome that hurdle of that mental resistance to this, the possibilities are fairly endless and you will immediately start believing in it. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts and laying down the landscape for us so clearly as far as digital signatures go from a state agency regulatory point of view, governance point of view, to its operation in the state, where we have one of the best cases, and also for that insight from one of Sri Lanka's largest export sectors. It is the largest export sector, apparels, and how successful it has been in that sector. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.